So a lot of you responded back to me and enjoyed the hip flexor quad stretching sequence I used for pushing and pulling. So immediately I said there were ways to do it in the transverse plane and there were ways to do it in the frontal plane. So I thought I would go ahead and I would show you a little bit about how you can do that. Again, just using simple exercises, simple movements to go ahead and lengthen out our hip flexor quadriceps complex while strengthening other aspects of our body. Let me show you what I'm talking about. We're going to go ahead and I've got the orange band hooked up here. Now you're going to find that these exercises are pretty demanding. You may find that all you need is a couple of red bands linked together because your starting resistance might have to be pretty small. Orange band works out nice, but just make sure you're not overstretching and over lengthening it. So what we're going to do is, we know that the hip flexor quadriceps complex, in order to stretch it, we need to create hip extension, we need to side bend away, and we need to rotate away. That's how we lengthen this out. So what we're going to do is, we're going to go ahead and we're going to load the left quad, and put ourselves into a right posterior position on our hip flexor quadricep on the right side. So what we're going to do is we're going to do that. Now, the horizontal vector, we talk about this all the time. The key to that horizontal vector is it doesn't happen with dead weight. It can only happen with elastic resistance, specifically resistance bands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this up over top and I'm going to go ahead and just put it on my head. Now, holding that position there, as I go down, my right side trunk is engaging, which is stabilizing my lumbar spine. And as I go down, I'm going to lengthen out and I'm going to let my arms be pulled. Now I'm going to let my arms be pulled, but I'm not going to let my head go with it. So I'm going to drop down, bring it overhead. 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 And last one. Excellent. What's that doing? Well, let me take it now from this side and let me show you what's happening. We'll use the red band on this side. We're taking it up overhead. As I go up overhead, I'm immediately creating a frontal plane movement. As I drop down, let the back knee bend, I'm lengthening out my quadricep. So I'm using gravity that way. I'm using horizontal vector to lengthen me in the frontal plane. So I'm taking it up here. If you can't hold it here, if you can't hold it here, just put it here. And then as you go down, let your hands release and then bring it back to your head. So you're like this, locked out tight. Go down. There's your stretch of your left hip flexor quad. Now we're going to get a little bit more frontal plane action by dropping down, releasing your hands, and letting them go overhead, back to the top. Release, back to the top. Now if you can, we want to go there. Lock out, drop down, release. Outstanding. Release, back up, dig in, back up. Now like we talked about before, because you have a staggered stance, back toes got to be digging in. Front heels got to be digging in. What's that engage? Locks your hips in. Horizontal vector locks your trunk in. So now hip flexor quadricep has no choice. Has to lengthen. Has to stretch out. How do you do it in transverse plane? Very simple. Put yourself in that same position. Drop down. We're going to put yourself so we're straight perpendicular to the band. We're going to go here. We're going to drop down and we're going to release. We're going to come back. Now it's not let yourself just whip. It's drop down, release. Come on back. Make it challenging here. Drop down, release. Come on back. Drop down, release. Come on back. Drop down, release. Come on back. The more you can stay in a sagittal plane with your feet, the more lengthening you're going to feel to your trunk and your hip flexor. If you need more support, widen your feet out. Go out into the frontal plane a little bit more. Watch how I position this foot here, this foot, and I'm now in a little bit more frontal plane. So now when I lock out and I drop down, a little bit easier to maintain stability. Going to get a little different flex, stretch on my hip flexor quad. The key is this though. If your feet are engaging the ground and you're being driven from the top down with a horizontal vector, then the key is, or it's going to happen, that hip flexor quadricep complex has to start lengthening out and mobilizing. I think it's an outstanding way to go ahead and get people that struggle with hip flexor quadricep mobility to start lengthening out. And believe me, when you start this, you're going to have to go ahead and go slow. You may find that just putting them in this position and locking out and holding may be all that you need to do to start with. And it may be with an orange band, it may be with a double linked up band. Staggered stance, use the ground, horizontal vector, you're set to go. Start opening up those hips and watch clients get incredibly more mobile. Guess what happens with more hip mobility? They start liking life a whole lot better, and they got low back pain. They might just see it go